Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Today I'm joined by Dom Zook of Saving Throw Show. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. So we've just been kind of like talking and lamenting our YouTube journeys because we started around the same time, um, and and I think we both come from a little bit of a older generation.
Mhm.
So it's kind of cool to compare notes.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting meeting people playing RPGs now because to me, like the age demographics has expanded so much. Like before it was just I was talking to guys like me, my age. And then now I'm talking to people from little kids to uh, people 20 years older than me. It's gotten such a wide demographic that it's exciting to see there.
Yeah, for sure. Before we go any further, folks, there are links in the descriptions. Always go check them out and follow Dom around the interwebs. And if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself and kind of tell people a little bit about yourself in case they don't know, but you guys have been around for a long time, like I said. So,
Thank you. Yeah. So again, I'm with Saving Throw Show. We've been producing content steadily since 2014, and do a lot of live play, actual play RPGs all across the gamut from D&D to indie games like Good Society, and everything in between. And that's sort of been what we do for a long time. And occasionally music videos and sketches and things like that when we get the urge. But our primary bread and butter is actual plays.
how did you guys get started with actual plays? And I mean, when we were talking, like I can only think of one channel out there or doing actual plays at the time, MEJP, and that
Mhm.
that was it.
Yeah. We what we were playing. So my friends and I were playing a second edition game, and uh, we had no intention of streaming. Streaming it was not even a thing. It was not even in our radar, and we were introducing a new friend to it, and we were trying to teach him and stuff. And we are like, what would be great is if there was a YouTube video that you could watch to learn how to play D&D. And we searched and searched, and the only ones we found were very, very um, um, difficult to watch, I guess would be the diplomatic way of saying it. So we said, okay, well, let's make our own videos. And we were quickly told, don't do second edition, do Pathfinder. So we started doing Pathfinder. And one of the things that we found was we were watching It Me JP, because we started doing research as to who's actually doing RPGs like this. And we were watching It Me JP, and that inspired us to stream a game. And so we actually rented out a theater that was set up for streaming. And I mean, this was very early. Like this was like the only place I could find in LA
What were they
that could stream.
streaming?
They were streaming theater shows. They were
Yeah.
streaming like live, like improv and uh, uh, plays and things like that. And it was wild. They had like a 6 camera setup, and this was the Acme Theater in LA. And they were like the only ones who were doing this. The only other people who were like doing any sort of remote streaming content were huge companies, or smaller companies, but with big pocketbooks. And so we rented that for a day and did a session and streamed it live. And I think we had maybe 6 or 7 people watching, which was, you know, pretty good at that time. And I loved it because I got my start doing public access television and stuff like that. So that sort of really sparked it for me. And we had a little bit of money left over from our Kickstarter to do the tutorials. And I took some of that money to buy some equipment and said, you know, by the end of this year, we're gonna start streaming a game. And because no one is streaming a game with everybody in the same room together. And so that's at least not that I could find. And so that's what we started doing. And now
Who
this is
was
where we
your
are.
original cast?
So the original cast was GM Jameson McDaniel, who is now he's writing on a bunch of things that he's done. He wrote on Altered Carbon, RPG, and other things from Hunters Entertainment. Tom Lommel, aka the Dungeon Bastard, Chris Greenwood, um, Sean Graham, Amy Vorpahl, and Virva Aryan. So Tom was like our big get, because the Dungeon Bastard at the time was like one of the big RPG things. Amy hadn't done any RPG stuff anywhere. In fact, she was still hiding from. She's told us like she wouldn't tell people, and she came on because we actually held auditions because we wanted, you know, we were just starting out, and it was just like us. It was just like dudes, you know. It was like we need to have some other influence in here.
Yeah.
So you know, we met with people, and Amy was the standout of all of those. And then we found out afterwards that Amy knew Tom because Amy had guested on the Dungeon Bastard. So for us, it was like, oh wow, okay, well there's some synergy there. That's great. And yeah, that was the original cast, and we did Barky's Brigade for I think a little over a year in a garage. And eventually we were able to find a tiny little studio in Hollywood, literally a closet. It was literally a closet, just enough room to fit a table.
I mean, there's nothing more D&D than playing it in a garage or a basement anyway, so.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because a lot of people were after, you know, when we said, oh, we're moving, finally, we're moving. We're like, oh man, but you're playing it, like that's the thing, you know. And I'm like, yes, but you haven't been in an LA heat wave in a garage that's, you know,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there's no air conditioning in. Yeah, so
I could absolutely sympathize with that for sure. I've worked a few jobs that have been quite hot, so
yeah,
um
yeah,
yeah, so I mean, so the people that were involved kind of had experience with, you know, at least the film side of stuff in addition to being gamers as well.
right, right, yeah,
I'm always
yeah.
envious of you folks because when we start out, we're like chimpanzees hitting buttons. Like our first videos were filmed on an iPhone with an external mic.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we were talking about this earlier, but the technology, the playing field is really, it's really easy to get started, and it really, then the quality of your content is really what sets you apart for the most part. There's glitz and glamour in, you know, being able to do a lot of After Effects moves and things like that, but just being able to simply present something and have a good message and have something good to say. Because I mean, we had camcorders that we used, bought, or borrowed, and that was like our extent. I had one DSLR camera that was our wide shot, but it couldn't. It had to shut off every
Every 30
20 minutes or
minutes.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
They still
it
do
was
that.
like,
I
yeah,
understand it's a taxation thing because
yeah.
if it doesn't shut off, it is then a video camera, which changes
Oh,
something. It's some shady business thing. I don't know.
right. Yeah. That could be. I could probably pop it open and solder a few things and make it stop doing that. But
Hmm.
yeah, at the time I was like, whatever. And so that was like our main like camera that we used for filming sketches and things of that nature. And then otherwise we just had these little cheap Panasonic camcorders that were, I think, about $500. And one we had one already, someone had one, so we used that, and then we bought, I think, a couple more, and just set them up on light stands, and had one light hanging above, and that was it, because I wanted everything around to be kind of muted and dark, and
Yeah.
so that you couldn't see, the baby carrier in one side, and all these other things that were kept in the garage. um yeah, and then we were just sitting at a table, literally like inches away from that table, and I was doing live switching, so I just had to keep my hands on the keyboard and hit the camera number to switch the camera, because no one was doing live switching. It was all either they were all remote, like It Me JP, or it was a recorded thing like Tabletop with Will Wheaton.
Hmm.
And I was like, we'll do live switching. That's what we're going to do. Also, because we had no way of doing independent videos at the time. So we were like, okay, let's see what we can do. And yeah, that's kind of how
If you do the live
started.
switching well, there is some advantages to that as well, though.
Oh yeah. I mean,
In posts, it makes it a little bit easier.
yeah, it was nice. It was nice to um like focus, and my whole intent with it was to be able to point the viewer to what was important at that time.
Now, did you
And
play in the games or did you just run production?
I just ran production.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't even play in a game until like two or 3 years after we started, because I was focused on just producing and just making stuff. So I had like bit parts in the tutorial and everything, but I was mainly directing and
The,
doing all the
the
production.
people behind the scenes are so much more important. I've always said, like, even when like WebDM busted onto the scene with like the with production values that just weren't really being used for talking videos,
Hmm.
and once we connected with them, started talking with them, like, as impressive as Jim Davis and Pruitt are, like, I was way more impressed with Travis, right? Because like the things that he was able to do, and how good he can make them look. It's like
Yeah.
I feel like almost any old head D&D guy can talk about D&D, but like doing that other stuff is like witchcraft to me. So
Yeah. I mean, I basically taught myself a lot. I had to teach myself Premiere, because I had been using Final Cut Pro, and then Premiere was kind of what other people were using. So I decided to use Premiere, and I wanted to use After Effects. And so I taught myself After Effects. I taught myself Photoshop. I taught myself all these things so that I could do it. And it was, I mean, I've been lucky to be able to kind of learn those things as kind of part of my day job, and then kind of use those skills over in Saving Throw. But for a long time, I'd be at my day job, and I would be pull open Photoshop, make thumbnails, and make overlays and stuff like that, and save those out so I could quickly use them. But because I didn't have anything at home to do that with. But yeah, it's really interesting, and you get to be intimately aware, especially when you're doing live switching. You become intimately aware of the players' like performance styles and pauses and tactics and all of these things, and you just know, okay, they're about to say something, take to camera two. And we
yeah.
switch over to camera two. So yeah, it becomes a really interesting sort of psychological experiment.
Uh, and then you guys also, most of your content is kind of long form, but you got some other stuff as well that you've done.
Hmm.
Like you've done
Yeah.
music videos. Is DM's Lament up over on Saving Throw as well? I think that's where I've
Yes.
seen it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like one of my
Yeah.
favorites.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Amy started doing, so one of our Kickstarter rewards was that Amy would write a song for you. And so we had about 30 of those songs. So she basically was learning ukulele at the time and
Uh,
was like, sure, I'll do that. And we're like, okay, cool. And then during Barky's Brigade, she was like, she wanted to she wrote a song for Barky's Brigade. And so we sang it at the beginning of every episode. And uh, then she got inspired to write these other tracks based on what was happening in the games. And so she then had basically a whole CD's worth of songs to do, including DM's Lament. And that was the one that she decided would be the single if it
yeah.
was official. And we made that that music video, and yeah, I mean uh, that was probably our most expensive and you know thought out video that we had ever done. I mean,
Can,
mostly it was bring a camcorder into the forest and let's see what we can get.
yeah.
But
Can
yeah.
you say or willing to say like how much it costs to make a video like that?
Um, a lot of people worked for free for
Yeah.
that. So in fact, everybody worked for free for that. Um, we paid, uh, I think the studio that we rented was something like $1,200. Makeup was around $400 or $500. Food was around $400. Supplies, because we built that whole everything in there is a set. So that
Yeah.
whole like basement at the beginning is a set that we built. And so that was just, we had some raw materials and stuff that we just affixed wood paneling to and stuff like that. And all of that probably was another $1,000. I think all told, I think we came in a little under $5,000 for
Wow,
all of
that's a
it.
lot of
Yeah.
money and that's with everyone just donating their time.
That's not, yeah. If we had been paying people, we would clear well over $10,000.
Yeah, that is a lot of money in the RPG space, especially back
Yeah,
then. Now, I mean,
right,
now
right.
it's nothing because we got the Avatar Kickstarter. It's like $6-7 million now.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I don't even know if we could have like kickstarted something like that. I
Yeah,
don't think we could have raised even $5,000 to say we wanted to do, a music video based on this song. Like I don't know that we would have had the people to do that. But it's wild to see the Kickstarters now that, for games and stuff that are passing million, 2 million, 3 million and up, for the games, which are decidedly more. There's a lot more to those, but a lot more people involved in them. But it's, yeah, I mean, I think, truth be told, I think we've probably cleared about $100 in ad revenue for DM's
yeah,
Lament on YouTube, so it's a ways from where we can pay for it. Yeah.
yeah. It to me like it's not so much like what it costs to do the things like as far as the Kickstarters are going on now. I'm just kind of blown away with the appetite for for the content and where the industry is kind of gone.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons why we play so many games is because I think on our channel, because I feel like their RPGs are a system of entertainment that are primal. It's storytelling at its very base level. And what I think is that a lot of people come into it via D&D, and either they're finding that D&D isn't answering their needs, their storytelling needs, or they're um, or they want to expand on that. And I think that there's huge opportunity now, especially because the audience is so wide and varied. There's huge opportunity for people to come in and go, well, how about this? Like Avatar, people love Avatar. I love Avatar. I back that project. So it's like, I want to play in that world. Give me those tools. And that comes out. And of course, there's always the argument of, well, you could play Avatar in D&D if you want. Sure, there's always that.
That is
But
my least favorite argument, because everyone asks, how do you play this in D&D? And generally,
yeah,
they're asking about a system, about a game that there's probably a system for already. I'm just like, play
that
that.
yeah, that's always that one of our one thing that I've been wanting to address for a long time is whether it's valuable to homebrew a system, or pick up a new system that is custom built for that thing that you want to do. That their D&D is capable of a lot of things, but sometimes there's a system that's just better built for something else, and you might as well just, instead of trying to make D&D work the way you want it to, pick up something else that can do it.
There becomes a certain point, there's a break point where you're just going to do way more work to
Yeah,
recreate, systems and subsystems in D&D than
yeah,
just
yeah.
learning the new thing.
Right, right. Well, I mean, yeah, at what point is it no longer D&D and it's something else completely,
Yeah.
and thinking about that as, and determining where to go from there. Do I stay with D&D or do I move into something else? And I think a lot of people, um, there are a lot of people that, especially for these Kickstarters that are, about these like huge entertainment products like Avatar. People are like, just give me the airbender. I don't want to have to convert a monk into,
Yeah.
how to do that and everything. I want an airbender. And I think there's a lot of appeal to that, and especially people who are not RPG players. And those people will consume that content regardless. They want to support Avatar. And I think that that's true for a lot of these Kickstarters. Is these people want to support whatever that project is and whoever that person is creating that project. And so it's really interesting. I mean, you look at Reaper Minis and they're huge Kickstarters. Like, I wouldn't think that there are that many people who like miniatures and painting miniatures, but we clearly love those. And there's a large portion of people who may never even play with those miniatures. I mean, I have
Yeah.
boxes of Reaper Minis at home that are unpainted, that I will probably never use in a game, but I still, when a Reaper Kickstarter comes out, I need all of them. It's a really interesting kind of,
Most people
um,
that back Bones Kickstarters, if you back Bones 5 or 6 or whatever number they're at, like you're still painting 2 or 3. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
thankfully, I do not have a mini addiction, and I hate painting minis, so that at least saves me some money. But
See, I've always wanted to get into mini painting, but it's never been a thing that a pastime that I've been equipped to handle. So someday when I'm like 80 in a cabin
yeah,
somewhere, I'll be painting minis. But
my favorite thing was third edition pre-painted minis. Not so much a fan of the blind randoms, but
Mhm.
actually just
Yeah,
having minis to throw on the table that I don't have to do anything to was nice.
yeah, oh yeah. Pre-painted minis are great, and like Hero Forge has revolutionized by having their painted, like, you create your mini and then it's already painted.
Yeah, the 3D
And
color, yeah, that's insane.
yeah, yeah, away you go. So yeah, that's bonkers.
So my partner Ted says the pile of shame, as many people call it.
Yes.
Ted doesn't have the pile of shame. It's more like a mountain. Although he's been on a painting frenzy lately, so he's
Yeah,
diminishing it. He's gonna turn the mountain into a hill.
Yeah, I always say that during like a holiday break or something. It's like, okay, I'm going to paint these 10 minis, and I bring them all home, and then I paint one, and I'm like, okay, that took a long time. That's all I can do. So I got one down. So I'm
What
one a year now.
What are you guys playing nowadays?
Right now, we have our Sunday show, New Pantheon Academia, which is an Overarms game. Overarms is an anime fueled RPG that's independent by Rookie Jet Studios, and we are starting our D&D game, Dice Ex Machina, back up for its second season in September. So that's all we have going on right now. We kind of pared it down. I moved out of LA. Everyone is still in LA, so we had to kind of pare things down and get things going like that. But yeah, we've got that, and then we have one shots and stuff. We have things coming up for Gen Con and everything, but those are our main shows. And we have Owl Bear Soup, which is our news show on Sundays as well.
What has been like one of your favorite games to have on the channel?
Oh, that's like making me pick my favorite kid. Well, my biased opinion is Wild Cards, which I was on, but that was our Savage Worlds show. I loved everything about that show, and it just got we had to let it go just because it was just it got too much to keep it going. There was a lot involved there, and so we had to say goodbye to that. But that was such a fun show. Pirates of Salt Bay was a D&D show. Abria Iyengar, who's now like it's the life of Abria Iyengar right now. People call it the summer of Abria, but it's really it's her world. But she's running Critical Role. She's running Dimension 20, and she's on Dimension 20. She's doing all these things now, but she was on Pirates of Salt Bay before that. And that that whole show, that whole cast was just like absolute perfection in terms of chaos energy with so much heart. Like it was amazing. I haven't really seen anything like that before or since. Um, and yeah, Wild Cards I love. New Pantheon is always great because it's such great stories. And just it's like miniature almost character work to watch that stuff. So and Dice Ex Machina is great too. Yeah, I don't know. I love all of our shows, so I can hardly pick one, but yeah, those are the shows that I tend to direct people to when they want to find out about our channel.
So, DM Guru 2 wants to know, how do you go about choosing a game system and campaign length to make a show that does really well?
Um, so we I mean, the game system has been less important to us. Like if I go by pure numbers, I mean, clearly D&D is the largest game system in the world and the one that's played the most. Um, but obviously that also makes it hard to sort of differentiate us from anybody else. So so we pick our D&D content very carefully, and we've had sponsored D&D shows before that we've done for Wizards, but um, Dice Ex Machina is not one of those, and neither is Salt Bay. Excuse me, but we we tend to look at things that we want to show that have the potential for a good story, and so usually the GM will come to me and go, "I want to do this story. I want to tell this tale." Like Abria came and she said, I want to do something piratey, boaty, and Ghost of Saltmarsh just came out. Like I'd love to do something in that world. And so we said, great, cool. We're just ending this D&D show. It's the perfect time for a new D&D show. So let's do that. Wild Cards was the same thing. Jordan Caves Callerman, the GM for that, said, I want to do a Western. I love Westerns, so it was a really easy sell for me. But he was like, I want to do this in Savage Worlds. And I was like, great, Savage Worlds is awesome. let's do it. Let's dive in. So it wasn't like we weren't thinking about what would sell well necessarily. We were really more concerned about where the story was going, and what kind of story we could tell. And we usually give seasons of like 10 episodes, a 10 episode season, and that kind of keeps everything sort of contained and constrained, so that we're not just going over, following every little nook and cranny of a world. It's a little bit more self-contained, and but the episode length can be anything. So usually no less than 2 hours. But in wildcards, I think we topped 5+ hours in an episode once. That was a really long one.
That is long.
So
That's too long.
yeah.
I mean, although
Yeah.
that you guys were doing it in person, that makes it better.
Yeah. I mean,
But
yeah,
you're also doing
that
it live, which makes it not better. So
right. Well, I mean, yeah, it was like 1 in the morning, I think, when we finally ended.
yeah.
And our time, which, for East Coasters who were watching us, they either had tuned out long ago, or were
So
barely hanging in there. But
so did you have to like switch away so people could sneak off to pee?
no, I mean, our whole thing was always, just leave if you need to leave. If you're at the
Yeah.
table and you need to go, just go. But we would institute breaks and stuff, kind of halfway through. Or but a lot of times it was just like, what would happen is, if we took a break, like, we would lose half our audience. So we wanted to try to keep things
Moving.
active
Yeah.
and going. So yeah, it was just, kind of pushing through. But when later on, we would do more breaks, because it was just like, it was bonkers to try to, do that much in a time. So
Yeah, it definitely it is much. Like for me, like stream games, even games that aren't being streamed but they're just online, it's like for me, like
mhm.
the 2 hour mark is kind of the sweet spot. Maybe 3 hours if it's just like a game we're playing with our friends and we're not streaming it. Although, and
Right.
also the weird thing is like with stream games, it's like without without question, like everyone I've asked is like 2 hours. Drop off is always 2 hours.
Oh yeah, yeah. We, in fact, when we started New Pantheon, the New Pantheon Academia, New Pantheon has been going on for about 6 seasons now. But it changed. It had a big shift over when we switched over to Overarms, and started New Pantheon Academia. But when we started that, and Dice Ex Machina were both shows were 2 hours long. And we're like, we're going to keep them to 2 hours, because beyond that, we start losing people a lot, and it's a lot more difficult to sort of gain traction on 3+ hour shows. So that's been relatively successful, honestly, in terms of timing. But there have been instances where we've had 2 hours, and we're just like, oh, we really need like another half hour or something like that,
Yeah.
and we're generally open to that if the GM and the table feel like doing that. But sometimes it can get um, a little hard to manage, if we're trying to go longer than that.
No, absolutely. I guess like that's one of my things about watching Critical Role is like I the way I like I'm not really a fan of watching stream games. Like we
Mhm.
stream games, we do it. I get it. It's cool that people enjoy it. But me personally, I just don't enjoy them for the most part. And when I would
I hear
watch
you.
Critical Role, the best way I can describe it is like 2 hours of amazing content spread over five. It's like and that's also why I go like, how can people say this is not real D&D? I'm like, that's why
Yeah,
I
yeah,
find it
right.
not fun to watch because it's like when it's like some things are just much more fun to do than watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and that was one of the big things that we were uh focused on, was the storytelling aspect, and the
Yeah,
fact that it's filmed for an audience. That kind of takes it away from being a game around a table that you're playing with friends. And for us, it was vitally important um, to be storytellers and filmmakers as opposed to D&D players, because yeah, we would, I mean, at my home games, it's like, okay, oh, hold on, let me look that up. Okay, oh yeah, no, you're right, and then we have there's back and forth, there's jokes, there's talking, there's all
Sling me
this
a
stuff,
slice
there's
of
getting it.
pizza this way, the
Yeah,
normal stuff.
yeah, yeah, there's that stuff. And when we started with Barky's Brigade, there was a lot of that, because we were eating pizza around the table, and there was a bit of that kind of um, I don't know, camaraderie of sorts, but it was the storytelling that we were really going for, and trying to expand. And yeah, I do think that there are people that watch, like I'm very much the same. Like I don't watch a ton of RPG content, because I'm producing a whole lot of it. So it's
You
like,
need a break at
you
a
know,
certain point.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, having that, like watching the you know anything that's not story driven is not compelling to me. It's interesting to see how other people deal with whatever they're running into, but
Yeah, we were briefly reviewing campaign 2 for Critical Role, and like the stuff that I liked the most was like when they weren't in combat. I would literally fall
mhm.
asleep as soon as they're like roll initiative.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I listen to a few podcasts, but the podcasts are kind of where I was really kind of directing my attention to, and getting my cues from, because podcasts don't have a visual element to help the viewer or listener along. And so uh, the good podcasts that I was listening to were really good about um, creating that world, for you. And that was something that I would take to our tables and just go like, just rule of cool everything. Like we don't need to go into the book for every little problem that we have, and the audience would definitely let us know if we did something wrong, so let's just play, and we'll just move forward. But yeah, um
I'm laughing at one of the
yeah.
comments in the chat from Brian.
Yes.
I wouldn't watch people play Monopoly, but if they made up accents and pretended they were landlords, I'd watch. Well, Brian,
Yeah,
maybe you're on to something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's all about it's about that content, and about
Yeah.
what you're showing. Yeah, it's like you could make the 415th D&D show um, out that month, but if you don't have some investment into, well, who these characters are, and what that story is, it's I might as well just keep playing at home. I don't need to watch people, just goofing off. It's my opinion.
I was just thinking about this Monopoly game, and every episode has to end in a fist fight between the players. Make it
Yeah.
authentic. So do you play any games that are like not streamed and just like for fun?
Yeah. Well, I just started. I didn't used to, because I just didn't have the time for it. But since I moved, and cut back a little bit, I've started a home game. So I'm doing a Sunless Citadel 5e game with a group here, but I'm slowly trying to get them into playing Savage Worlds, so I can run some Savage Worlds with them. But
Do you feel
yeah,
guilty?
not streaming a game.
Yeah.
No, no. Yeah, it's interesting. For a long time, I was all like, well, if I'm just going to do something, it's like, if I'm going to paint a mini, I might as well record me painting a mini and put it up. That content's content.
Yeah.
But you said it before. It's like you need a break of some kind, and playing off stream, like, it's so much more relaxing, and so much easier, in my opinion, because you're not you're able to do the things that you can't do because you've got a camera pointed at your face the whole time. So, or you have to be thinking about the camera pointed at your face the whole
You're not
time. So
working.
you're not working. Yeah.
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 How many
So
years in did it take you to come to that?
I mean, because I'm just now doing it,
Mm.
it took me about 7 years to get to that point. But yeah.
Oh yeah. So for us it was like around year 5, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
we were just recording our home games and throwing them up, and it, I mean, like, the production was garbage. Literally it was a webcam on the other side of the table, and like we're like our gaming table is a pool table that has been topped, right? So it's
Hmm.
super wide, which means that makes shots of extra difficult. And we would hang a Yeti from the ceiling to
Hmm.
record sound, and then we would just throw those up. And we got to like, we finished like our 5 year campaigns, taking them from like level 1 through 20, or close to finishing them. So it was right around the year 5, and Ted's like, he's like really getting into Critical Role and watching some of his other stream shows, and he's seeing like the cool things they're doing beforehand with their like trailers and stuff. He's like, we could
Hmm.
totally do that. I'm like, Ted, but then the video we put up of the game will be shit. Like, why would you do that? Like, so it's
Right.
like we came to a moment where we're like, well, we either have to really rethink how we're recording our games, and take it to the next level, or maybe not record them at all. And also, like, what we did was very unfair. Like, you casted people and set it up to be that
Hmm.
thing. We just like drafted our gaming group into like,
Right.
hey, we do a thing now, do you guys want mind if we record it? And they're like, I guess it's okay. And so, which made it very much less showy and more D&D, and a bunch of people
Hmm.
would still watch it. But in hindsight, like, it was very unfair to our friends, and like, it's weird. No one wants to think about people watching them scarf pizza at the table. And then also, thankfully, it wasn't live, because occasionally, one of my friends would make an outburst that you just would not want to go online or video of, and then you got to like remember where that thing was so you can cut it out, and
Right.
and make it palatable for consumption. Um, so like for us, we just came to like, either we're going to do this or we're not. And we said, you know what? Let's just play our games. Like, we put
Right.
enough content out there to prove that, like, if you really want to see our body work and see that we actually do the thing that we say we do, there's enough for people to check it out by this point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, you bring up a good point. Like, we thought about just, doing very at the very beginning, we thought about just doing our gaming group. But, we realized kind of early on that it's like, first, it's not really representative of the kind of group that we want to show and broadcast to the world.
Yeah.
But also, uh, not all of us were trained performers, or anything. Like a few of us were theater people, and film people, and so we kind of knew to find our light, to find the camera and all of that stuff. But uh, we kind of had to put together a group that not only knew the game but also kind of knew how to be a performer.
Yeah.
And because yeah, we would bring people in who had played home games and stuff like that, and then as soon as they get on camera, it's different. It's a totally different thing. And they're used to being nose in the book or whatever. It's like, you can't do that, or reading every uh, you know uh, description or something from the module, and it's just like, that's really boring. Like, you can't do that. um, and so we had to really have like this uh, a different mentality about how to construct the games at the table. um, and we took a lot of effort to cast groups together, because you know it would never work well to just like, let me pick the 5 most popular people in RPGs and put them at a table together. That doesn't necessarily always work unless you've got a good editor.
Yeah.
So we were not editing, we were live. So we had to find a group of people who not only could play well together, but were good at um, doing that give and take, that improvisational, listening and reacting kind of um, performance. And so it's a much different beast. And at my home game, I don't have to worry about that. I can add all these things that I can't do at a table because I don't need to worry about it.
What is the process for that like?
Casting,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in the early days, it was really difficult because there weren't performers. There wasn't Geek and Sundry was just getting started, and certainly it was Critical Role was basically the only thing. There weren't a large
In a year,
collection of
Critical Role would be a thing, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So yeah, so it was difficult to find people, especially a diverse group. I had a ton of 40-year-old white guys that looked like me
yeah, yeah.
that
Dude, you know
that
how
had
long it
played
took us to get
D&D.
a black guy in our group? Decades.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was important to continually push that and push out the narrative that it's only for one group of people or something like that, and introduce the narrative that it's a diverse. When I would go to conventions, it's super wide and diverse. It's like I know that
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different people here. So yeah, so we kind of targeted um, uh, groups that we went to find LGBTQ and people of color and all these things, and try to get people in that we knew would have a different um, voice, first of all. But really, it started when Amy and Ivan started working at Geek and Sundry. We were able to sort of start parsing some people through Geek and Sundry. And then we also had some people who were doing improv, and doing a lot of games at Meltdown Comics in LA, which is sadly burned down and is no more. But that's Meltdown is where Nerdist had a bunch of offices, and well, an office and stuff. And so we kind of were starting to meld the LA D&D scene together, and eventually, like, our cast base expanded, and then we were starting to find actors who were like, I've heard about this D&D thing, I'd really be interested in playing it. And then, okay, let's see. So generally what we do is we will bring someone in for a one shot. We do the one shot. If it's good, then we bring them back for like a three-parter, and see how they work from week to week to week. And then if all that checks out okay, then we move them to a 10 episode season. And we actually like had like scientific almost, like ideas of this player is a this kind of player, this player is a this kind of player, and these two don't work together because this one's always trying to control things, this one's always trying to control things, or this person will completely run over this person or something like that. So we had a list of everyone's strengths and weaknesses as performers for an RPG, and kind of took that. And
And what was your background as far as before you started doing this stuff? You're working in LA. I'm guessing you're kind of in and around that industry. So, like, what was your background?
yeah, I mean, I had back in Seattle, I had been making a lot of short films. I would do the 48-hour film project, and released a short film, a horror short that did the festival circuit and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. And then I moved down to LA to pursue film, and the writer's strike happened right as I moved down. So I moved into the game industry as a software tester for a little bit until I moved into sort of film adjacent company. I was doing DVD and Blu-ray menus for all the big HBO, Paramount, all the big companies. And I was doing that for almost 10 years. And towards the end of that career is when I started Saving Throw. And so I was, doing a lot of technical stuff, graphic stuff, and all of that in my career, and that kind of moved things through. But I got my start in theater, and so I had done a lot of theatrical productions, a lot of auditions, a lot of things like that. So it's like finding people that way was kind of, that was where I was coming from.
If if you're not from that world, and then you try to jump into like casting, I feel like it's very traumatic as a human being.
It is because you're telling no to so many people, and you're judging people on sometimes the most inane things,
Yeah.
and sometimes very personal things. So it can be really difficult to kind of go through that. But we had a little bit of a buffer because it was uh, we were looking more at RPG. Do you have any RPG experience? Well, no. Okay. Well, then we've really got to work on how that's going to be, And so now there's a glut of people who don't have RPG experience, but see the popularity, see Critical Role skyrocketing through things, and go, especially Hollywood actors, and going, I want to do that now.
Yeah.
And you're like, great, but you're not great to watch play D&D, actually. There's a difference. There's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
difference there between.
And also, this is not going to be the gateway to your career. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah. You might want to continue doing something else, but yeah,
Uh,
it's interesting.
I mean, so we're over here on the East Coast, and it is sometimes I feel like on the West Coast you're grabbing all these people that kind of like want to be actors, and they're like, well,
Right.
this is acting adjacent. And I was
Yeah.
like, so I always kind of made the joke is like, can we find found models from New York and do a D&D game?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's really honestly the best performers that I found have been improv people who are well versed in improv theater, because I mean that's essentially what playing an RPG is you never know what's going to happen next, from beat to beat to beat. There's no script. There's very little story. You are basically, you are literally given, you all show up at a tavern, you're given your place, you're in a tavern, you're a knight, you're a ranger, you're a whatever. And a fairy has given you, a quest to go find their laundry. Go, and
But
then you make it up.
aside from
Uh,
that too, like where that's just a good crossover,
mhm.
like so I'm in my mid 40s at this point, and like I noticed a transition when I went from playing as a teen to a young adult, and what would happen like in those games where we would start pulling people in from my brothers and my brother-in-law's friend groups that were in college, so you started getting more like theater kids, right? So
Yeah.
it started
Hmm.
changing the dynamic of the game. But now like those people are all grown adults, right? And now we're getting more like there's more of a direct crossover of, yes, these people are, are actors or aspiring actors, but they all probably, or a good portion of them, started off as those theater kids that were playing D&D, right?
Yeah.
So you're also getting that as well, where like it seems like a natural evolution for the hobby and also that industry.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I started. I was a theater kid. I played D&D before I even got into theater, but that was a marrying. But what I liked about D&D was the character work, was creating that backstory and seeing that character flesh itself out. And I carried that into theater and then into film, and all those things kind of married themselves together in the end for Saving Throw. But um, yeah, it's a fascinating kind of thing to watch, and see all the new faces and people getting into it, and seeing kind of what clicks and what doesn't. It's I don't know. It's endlessly fascinating to me.
So Brian wants to know when you get to play, what classes do you prefer and why?
I prefer martial classes generally. If it's D&D, fighter, barbarian, ranger, type of stuff. I don't like spell work very much. I don't know why. I've certainly played my fair share of wizards, but um, yeah, I don't know. I like beating stuff with a big stick, or a sharp, pointy thing. But um, yeah, that's it. I just like beating things up.
You mentioned Savage Worlds a couple times. Is that one of your preferred systems?
Yeah, I love Savage Worlds. I think um it is it's got its faults, but it's certainly, I feel, one of the most flexible game systems. It rides that line between um uh a D&D, which isn't, D&D isn't necessarily rules heavy, but it's certain, there's a lot to it, especially if you start drilling down into characters and classes and stuff. And then you've got like a Powered by the Apocalypse or something that's really rules light. Savage Worlds kind of sits in the middle of those two, and to me is offers the best bang for the buck in terms of what I want to play. I can just pick up the game and I can literally run anything, because the game is built in such a good way that I can
Yeah.
easily do that. I don't, and they have different settings and stuff, like Deadlands is their Weird West setting. That's one of my favorites. East Texas University, we've done on the channel, is kind of like Buffy Goes to College. And they have a ton of different settings, but I've run DuckTales using Savage Worlds. It's like it's super easy and flexible to be used for just about anything. So I super enjoy it. But yeah, Brian says D&D 5e is rules hefty. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's husky. It's a rules
It's not
husky system.
3.5 or Pathfinder, but
No,
you know,
yeah,
well, it's funny because you had mentioned play, wanting to start the channel with AD&D because that was what you're familiar with. Which, like
mhm,
AD&D, and compared to some of the games now, isn't rules heavy. It's just the
right.
rules that you did have were needlessly complex for
Yeah,
like no
yes.
reason. So
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting. Part of what I like about 5e was they kind of went back to 2e
yeah,
in a lot of respects, and
with a better
and
rule set.
with a better rule set. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
which
So
made it good. Yeah, so Savage, I have not actually played Savage Worlds yet. It's on the list. That being said, like I have spent hours talking to Clint Black, who works for them and
Clint's
also
amazing.
tabletop
Yeah,
Carolina
Carolina
tables.
game tables. Yeah,
Yeah, at a different conventions and stuff. Him and
yeah,
Jody are great people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He Clint has been awesome, and we worked with Clint a lot in all of our games that we've run with Savage Worlds, and he's given us like special things that are just for our table and stuff, special rules just for our table and everything, which
Yeah,
is, it's great. It's like we've got an official rule that we can use now because Clint watches our show and likes it. So that's been really fun getting to know all of
nice.
those guys.
Now
So
I've not
yeah,
yet been able to interact with Hensley,
Shane Hensley. Yeah,
Shane Hensley.
yeah.
Um, and but it was interesting that I did get a chance to go back and play Torg, like the new Torg game, and
Oh
like
yeah.
he cut his teeth there, and you can kind of
Hmm.
from what little I know of Savage Worlds, you can see like the evolution and the stuff that was taken from that system into
Yeah.
into Savage Worlds.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of bits and pieces that kind of play into that. But yeah, the real core basics of Savage Worlds, it's a real hard system to beat, I think, in many things. And people always ask me, it's like, oh, I'd love to play this,
Yeah.
and I just go, Savage Worlds will do that. If there isn't an official game for it, Savage Worlds will do it. So
Yeah, we used to do the
yeah.
same with like Mutants and Masterminds. It like
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
super flexible like that as far as like you could build any kind of character you wanted to.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Mutants and Mats. But again, Savage Worlds really great for superhero campaigns. Their necessary evil setting is super fun. You basically play a villain because all the heroes have died in an alien invasion, and so
Yeah.
you are one of the supervillains that must either help or hurt humanity from there on out.
Oh, that sounds like a great premise for a game. So
Oh,
we
it's
are
it's fantastic.
we are right up on the hour mark, and I know you're sneaking this in, so I
Right.
won't detain you any further. But I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Uh, yeah. Thank you for having me. First of all, this is a lot of fun. I love talking RPGs and streaming RPGs. Um, I would say if people are interested on hearing more about this, we've got 3 panels or shows happening at Gen Con online this year. So it's free to get a badge and it's free to get tickets to our shows. Just please do so. And they'll probably be streamed on our channel, but I'm doing one just talking all about producing streamed RPGs. So if you're curious about getting into it or want to expand or anything like that, come watch those. We're also doing a live adventure planning and a live game of Mysterium, the RPG. So we were talking about Monopoly, the RPG.
Yeah, yeah.
We've taken Mysterium and made an RPG out of it using Savage Worlds. So
Nice, of course.
yeah. So yeah, I hope people can come to that. If you just search Saving Throw in the Gen Con online event catalog, you'll find our stuff.
Also, there are links in the description. I'm sure if you follow some of those, that'll make sure you get to those Gen Con links as well. So
Yeah.
so go do that. And until next time, stay nerdy.